Well, folks, we're back with another card review here for Alterac Valley. It has been a crazy day of card reveals. Circling back here to catch up on all today's cards after I got my reveal out. Wanted to give it some time on YouTube, but I think I got like 10 cards in this video, some of which are just bonkers good, I think. So let's kick it off here with Scabs himself. Probably saw my reveal video already, so I won't go into a ton of detail. We'll talk more about the quality of this card, which I think is very high. Scabs is a 7-mana Vanish with some significant bonuses. First off, I guess you get 5 armor. You get 2 4/2 stealth minions left behind after vanishing all of your opponent's board away, which means it's a very nice swing with some aggression built into it, because that's like 8 damage that has a decent chance of hitting face if if the opponent's deck just can't deal with the stealth 4/2s. That's a big threat on board. So very, very swingy from a board removal standpoint. Also has all the normal Vanish upsides of being a stall, removal, universal removal that doesn't like proc death rattles and stuff, and bouncing your own things back to hand, which can be relevant. And then on top of that, you get this nutty hero power for Scabs, Sleight of Hand. It is 0 mana, and it reads the next card you play this turn costs 2 less. So I mean, it's kind of a preparation that works on any card at the start of any given turn. I talked about some like weird, wacky stuff you can do with it, but realistically, it's just 2 free mana every single turn, giving you extra mana to work with for your field contact turns or anything like that, where you need to set it up, maybe weave in some combos and stuff. It's just really good free mana, and you get to use it immediately after playing Scabs as well, so that even helps that tempo turn a little bit. So all in all here, we have a great removal tool. We've got like combo and aggression built into this as well. Potential for both of those exists, because, you know, if you need some big pop-off turn with Garrote Rogue style stuff, having an extra 2 mana to work with could be an enormous deal. I think this could even really be like the top end of a more aggressive or mid-range deck, where you just need that kind of final push. You just kind of remove your opponent's stuff, maybe bounce some good battle cries back to hand, and kind of reset and take that final push in future turns. So multiple ways to play this card, proven history of results, big damage upside on these shadows if they stick, just long-term mana return. All in all, it seems to do a lot of things very, very well. Speaking of hero cards that do things well, this is dreadlich Tamzin here for Warlock, because we needed more crazy Warlock cards. This is a 6 mana hero card, 5 armor. Battlecry, deal 3 damage to all minions, and shuffle 3 rifts into your deck. A rift is a cast when drawn spell that summons a 3/3. So essentially you're just shuffling a bunch of those dudes into your deck, but not actually paying any price of drawing them. They're just free to draw and get summoned. And then also, you draw 3 cards on top of this. When I first saw this card revealed, I didn't actually even notice the draw 3 cards part. I was like, oh, okay, so it's like kind of a good board clear here with this nice upside of these dread imps, and you got this hero power that's just better than the base hero power, unless you're quest lock, I guess. But generally speaking, just straight up better. But you also draw 3 cards. You have a chance of getting these rifts immediately. Even if you don't get the rifts immediately, you just get 3 cards. That's great for 6 mana, because you have the window here to essentially stabilize. You're going to clear your opponent's board, get a little life while drawing cards. So normally, you're taking a pretty down turn to draw cards. Here, you're probably not even taking much of a down turn. You might get a 3/3 on board afterwards. You wipe out your opponent's stuff, and you get 3 cards back. That's amazing. And then this Chains of Dread hero power that shuffles another rift into your deck every time you hit it, and you draw a card. So just consistent card draw like Warlock likes, but then this upside of the very occasional free 3/3. So what does that mean? Well, this card just does a lot well. Now, I don't know that this fits especially perfectly into Quest Warlock as it's currently envisioned. This hero power actually is kind of worse for Quest Warlock. I don't know if they really need these 3/3s. They don't really need the card draw or removal. So this is one of those cards that it's not actually maybe going to be good right away. This is like probably going to be more fringe. There will be decks that want this and care about this, but it'll be more fringe, I think, to start. But then eventually there will be some deck where this just makes way too much sense, because it just does a lot on the front half of this battle cry. And then there's this long-term upside for it as well. As soon as you stop caring about self-damage and quest for quest lock and other sorts of warlocks come to the forefront, which I think they inevitably will in future expansions and rotations, Dreadlich Tamsin becomes, I think, really, really strong. Very bonkers card at that stage, so another great hero card. So moving on here to another legendary for Warlock. This is Tamzinsphylactery. Of course, she's a Lich, which means she needs a Phylactery, and this is a 4-mana legendary spell. It discovers a friendly Death Rattle minion that died this game, and then it gives your minions that minion's Death Rattle. So essentially here, it's one of those wide board 4-mana follow-ups. We've seen a bunch of these in various stages of Hearthstone. I think Soul Over the Forest is the one that comes to mind most readily, and there's been hits and misses in that kind of range. Soul of the Forest has definitely been a good card. And Warlock has been getting more token wide board stuff. They just got Wicked Shipment in the mini set, which can summon a lot of imps very affordably and might make Tamzinsphylactery a good follow-up. Now, when I go to look at the Death Rattles available right now that I think would be a great fit for this, there's not a lot that jumps out. There's like some card draw stuff like Loot Hoarder, which would be easy to get down early. That kind of makes this a much worse composting for what we see in Druid. Then there's like, of course, board-based stuff where you can summon some minions. There's like the ooze that summons a 2/2 adventurer, devouring ooze or something. So it could be like a Soul of the Forest with a little bit of upside essentially. And then there's like the bigger stuff if you want to play more for the late game, like Envoy Rustwicks, where you could give your entire board the ability to shuffle 3 primes into your deck if you want some just like obscene value deck, which is how I'm going to play this, but I don't think will be competitive just because that's rather slow. So all in all, mixed results here. I'm more worried about the kind of function of this or the setup for this than I am for the payoff. I'm sure there will eventually be Death Rattles or a deck that can find the right Death Rattles to make this a worthwhile play for 4 mana. The bigger concern is building the token deck around it and the support around it to make that into a good deck, which Warlock has played Zoo very successfully, but that's not exactly a token deck that goes really, really wide where this card would be best. And forcing specific Death Rattles into that might make things a little harder to work with. So all in all, I mean, it's fine. It's got some potential, but I think it's got that context problem that so many cards do, where other decks will probably just do things better. And you can't rely on a card like this too much because it's a legendary. It's a one-of. So if you're looking for that consistent payoff for your token style, this may not always provide that, which means it's even harder to really build that deck into a cohesive package. So moving on here to Snowball Fight for Shaman. We finally got some Frost Shaman stuff, and this is actually a pretty cool card. I don't think it's enough to make Baron Glacier good on its own, but this card might be fine as is. This is a 3-mana spell for Shaman. Deal 1 damage to a minion and freeze it, and then if that minion survives, repeat this on another minion. So essentially here you can get a chain of throwing snowballs at your opponent's minions and freezing out their entire board. With some risk, if this hits a 1 health minion, essentially it will end the chain. And if your opponent had 4 or 5 5s and a single 1/1, you might hit that 1/1 and break your chain early and be disappointed that you didn't really get a Frost Nova, you just froze a couple things. But in many scenarios, there will be spots where this just freezes out everything very efficiently, also does some damage, kills a thing, and basically it's better than a Frost Nova against certain boards, riskier than a Frost Nova against other boards, but all in all, still, I think this kind of card has proven to be very good in Hearthstone. Things that just lock down your opponent. I think the chip damage is actually pretty meaningful when you're trying to find board clears for the future or setting up to clean things up. Or in Shaman, sometimes just stalling out is enough because you're just enacting your own gameplay and hitting them in the face really hard, whatever it might be. So all in all, I think this card does a lot of things well, has a proven track record for these sorts of things to succeed. And although it doesn't fit every board state, there are certain boards and scenarios where this is going to be more awkward than good. I think it'll fit enough to be a powerful card. So moving on here to another Frost-themed spell, this time for Mage. This is Build a Snowman. 3-mana spell. Summons a 3/3 Snowman that freezes and adds Build a Snowbrute to your hand, which summons a 6/6 Snowbrute that freezes, and that adds Build a Snogre to your hand, and the Snogre is a 9/9 Snogre that freezes. So this is kind of a Pyros spell version. Remember that old card Pyros that would create chains in your hand of more Pyroses? But in this case, they're a little bigger, at least in the front half, and smaller at the end, but they freeze, so some upside over a Pyro style card. On top of that, this is a proactive frost spell, something I think Quest Mage sometimes has trouble with. They have ice barriers, but a lot of those frost spells can get kind of stuck in hand. This might give them an outlet to do that and actually return another frost spell to hand. I don't know that they're going to be wanting to spend 6 mana on build a Snow Brute in Quest Mage, but the possibility at the very least exists. In all, this is a lot of value packed into a single card, right? Having this chain into multiple plays in the future can be a really big deal. Now, much like Pyros, this is kind of slow on the second halves, like spending 9 mana for a single minion. Even if it freezes, that is a pretty big commitment in Hearthstone these days. So it's going to take specific scenarios to make this good. Thinking about slower formats like maybe Arena, this makes some sense. Maybe somewhere like Duels, if you can cheese this out sooner or reduce the cost of these spells, like that's kind of great. But in standard format, there's a lot to go into this from a mana standpoint to really get the full value necessary out of it. So I think there will be some real limitations here on Build a Snowman. But perhaps Quest Mage just needs this 3 mana frost spell that's easy to commit to and play proactively if they want to open up their lines a little bit. I doubt it personally, but that is an angle for this one. Otherwise, probably just a little too slow and value oriented for normal standard Hearthstone. So moving on here to Frostwolf Kennels for Druid, and this is going to be a cycle of wolf-themed cards here for Druid. This one is one of the objectives we've seen before with the last 3 turns effect. It's going to summon you a 2/2 wolf with stealth at the end of each turn for 3 turns. So in total, you get 3 2/2 bodies, all with stealth, for 3 mana. Now that's a lot of stuff for 3 mana, but of course it takes a little while to spin this up like all the other objectives. And that's been my biggest criticism of objectives so far from a power level standpoint, is that they take a little too long to get going, I think, to be impactful. Now, Druid, I think, changes that a little bit. We've seen multiple examples of Druid in the past when building out wide boards where they're okay to take some down turns in order to set up for a really big turn in the mid game. So think about things like Glowfly Swarm, for instance, right? Sometimes they wouldn't really do a lot until turn 5. Then they just dump some Glowflies and ride those Glowflies to victory because the opponent didn't have a great way to deal with those, and they're able to kind of swing off of that and get enough pressure and damage off that to win the game. Even now, a little bit with Taunt Druid, we can see this. Sometimes they don't have like that perfect curve opener in Taunt Druid, and they just set up for that big Oracle of Elune turn in the mid game as opposed to curving out in the early game. And it's just so big and so overwhelming that some decks just can't recover from that. And I think weirdly, Frostwolf Kennels kind of plays into that style. And this whole wolf package might actually fit okay into this kind of token Taunt Druid thing that we have existing right now. Because essentially, if you don't need to do a lot, these wolves can kind of just chill on board with stealth. Most decks aren't really going to remove them. Some Holy Novas and stuff exist, sure, but a lot of decks just won't have a way to interact with them. They kind of sit there, and then you have like an Arbor up on 5 that you just dump on a bunch of Frostwolf Kennel pups or wolves or whatever they are, and boom, you're in that spot where you've swung in the mid game and you've gone so big and so wide on it that maybe your opponent just can't recover. You might also do that in combination of a lot of other things, as we'll talk about here in a second. So I don't think the slower build up for this card is as punishing essentially in Druid as it would be in other decks, other archetypes. I think they can actually play towards that pretty well. Just, hey man, I got an Arbor up and you lose. And I think that makes Frostwolf Kennels actually a card with a surprising amount of potential. So we also have here the Dire Frostwolf, another wolf card, 4 mana 4/4 beast with stealth on this one, and Death Rattle summon a 2/2 wolf with stealth. So a lot of stuff packed into this card. I saw it compared to Piloted Shredder of old. It does have that sort of vibe, but just way better. It's like the Death Rattle minion. I mean, technically the stats are worse on average than a Piloted Shredder, I guess, but it has stealth. So, that's got some upside. Plus, the front half of this has stealth, which makes this, I think, a really sticky and potentially very aggressive sort of card, kind of like we just saw with our previous card. Just plop this down if you need to attack with it right away, just to take a trade or just hit for 4 because it's so sticky and annoying. Do that. If your opponent deals with it, you still leave the wolf behind for that next turn Arbor up or follow up of whatever kind it might be. So this is just a big old pile of stuff and problems and friction for your opponent to deal with. And I like these stealth cards that can turn the corner and go face very easily and have some pressure output. Now, this does compete a lot with like Park Panther that we already see in the same expansion cycle. So, some decks might try to compete with those two. I think a lot of decks might just run both. They're both great, more aggressively focused 4-drops that kind of serve different purposes, but still fit in the same sort of environment. And we'll have some beast synergy stuff we talk about here in a second. So in either case, I think Dire Frostwolf is just maybe too much going on and too good to ignore, and therefore probably another good card. And then finally here we have the Frost Saber Matriarch that kind of pays off all these little stealth wolves and many other things in Druid. This is a 7-mana 4/5 beast with Taunt, and it costs 1 less for each beast you've summoned this game. So all of the other wolves you're summoning are going to feed into making this thing very, very affordable, which, keep in mind, this also has Taunt, so there are some Razormane Battle Guard synergies, and this can go really low cost. So there are some Oracle of Elune synergies here as well, making, I think, this package fit rather nicely and tidily into the token Taunt Druid stuff we see today. Now, I don't know the list well enough to kind of see how all this prioritizes and fits in and what makes the cut and what doesn't, but this seems, at least at a top level, very synergistic and like it could be very high potential. And we know cards like this, these like corridor creeper sort of things where it comes down for 0, becomes super disruptive, they're very powerful, especially when you can maybe play this with that Arbor up on 5 because you've summoned enough beasts thus far throughout the game and you're just swarming like crazy and overwhelming your opponent with stats and tempo. I think this plays really nicely into that. Keep in mind, this is not like the old card Knight of the Wild that had to be in hand when things were getting summoned. This is this game, so even if you top deck, it's still going to be 0 mana in case you were concerned about that. So yet again, I think this is actually a really good fit for Druid and a pretty powerful card. So speaking of Druid, we got another hit here, I think. This is Capture Cold Tooth Mine, a 2-mana spell. And it's like the ultimate tutor card. You can choose one. You can either choose to draw your lowest cost card or choose to draw your highest cost card. And that's really cool because in either scenario, you can build certain decks where you want to do this. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh, Vandar, I can finally tutor my Vandar. I mean, you could technically, right? I mean, you might get the other Capture Cold Tooth Mine, which then might get you a Vandar if you ran 2 of these. But hey, it could work technically, right? That's one use case. Some other people are talking about like, Embiggen. I can find my Embiggen really easily with Capture Cold Tooth Mine. So there are some scenarios where the lower cost card actually does make sense for something you'd want to find. Maybe you need like a Solar Eclipse for some pop-off. Might be a more, sensible use case as far as I'm concerned. I think the more common use case will be finding the highest cost card. Finding that big legendary bomb, that big win condition, finding a hero card or something, whatever it might be. I think you're going to often want to go for the highest cost card here. We already see Talon being played like that a lot, but Talon, of course, is specific to minions, and he costs 5 mana, and he's on a delay, whereas all of this is only 2 mana. You can do it right away. You get the card immediately. I think that makes this very interesting. In some ways, it's a downside that it's not either specifically a spell or a minion, but a lot of that can be solved, I think, in deck construction. So, you just... If you really need the high cost minion or the high cost spell, that's just how you'll build your deck and structure it. So those remain the highest cost sort of things. So all in all, I mean, tutor cards are great. This is a very affordable and very flexible tutor card that a lot of different decks might be able to utilize well. This looks like a great tool to me. And then finally here we have the Field of Strife for Demon Hunter, another objective card lasting 3 turns. It's 2 mana and it reads your minions have +1 attack. So pretty interesting. Couple ways to use this one, I think. Clearly, you're going to want a wide board to get the most use case out of this, and that kind of screams token Demon Hunter. So if you summon a bunch of rushing 1/1s, these would be able to take much better trades because they become 2/1 rush minions, maybe cleaning up your opponent's board with far greater ease. Alternatively, if you've already stuck some 1/1s, your opponent couldn't quite clean them up, this could be a way to get some additional damage heading to the face. Kind of like a really split bloodlust, right? It's +3 attack over 3 turns, and you just get 1 turn at a time. So it could be kind of an instant way to get some damage, unlike a lot of the objectives don't really have a benefit until the end of turn. If you have stuff on board already, Field of Strife is going to be good right away because it's active immediately, which could be helpful in a pinch, and you've also got this set up maybe for later. Now, all that said, it is still ultimately just +1 attack, which isn't that great of a finisher, unlike, say, Bloodlust, of course, which, would set up great ways to kill your opponent. This isn't going to do quite as much as like a Savage or Bloodlust style card. It's much more chippy in its damage. And often if you want finishers, you want like as much as possible right away because you're trying to end the game. You don't care about the next 2 turns. So I think you have to kind of refocus your thoughts on this one as more of like a builder over time of value. And that's where you start looking at those rush minions, taking trade ends, or maybe getting multiple instances of chip damage and like a Death Rattle deck with a bunch of sticky stuff. I'm not sure it does enough there. I'm not convinced it's going to add up. You're going to have enough minions. They're going to be ready to attack. There's all these different checks that go into that. So I think this one's going to end up being a little too slow, but I think there's a glimmer of hope because it's good when you play it, unlike these other objectives. And that might get this card over the hump, but I suspect it'll still fall through the cracks pretty often. Shadow Crafter Scabs is a 5-star card. Dreadlich Tamzin is a 4-star card. Tamzinsphylactery is a 3-star card. Snowball Fight is a 4-star card. Build a Snowman is a 2-star card. Frostwolf Kennels is a 3-star card. Saber Matriarch is a 4-star card. Dire Frostwolf is a 4-star card. Capture Cold Tooth Mine is a 4-star card. Field of Strife is a 2-star card. And there you go, folks. That is it for this card review. Some pretty crazy ones here. Thought about giving Tamzin 5 stars, but I think the fact that I don't think she'll see play right away might be the limiter. But she's pretty good, I think. So all in all, some really strong stuff in this particular set of reviews. That said, curious to hear your thoughts. What did I overrate, underrate, etc.? Lock in your bold predictions now so that we can all be made fun of later. If you didn't see this, I got made fun of on Reddit today. Hold up. This is pretty funny. Let me pull this up. It said, I was looking at some expansion reviews, and apparently I gave Baku 2 stars. So this is my reaction phase. So anyway, lock in your dumb predictions now. Can't wait to see those. Thanks much as always for watching. Stay tuned tomorrow for more reviews. And until next time, game on.